welcome to Switch Lighting, and we'd like to ask you if you could come join us up at the front of the room. We'd like to get started with the program, and then you'll be able to all migrate back and enjoy the lovely space and the drinks later on. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out to join us this evening. It's a real treat to see so many people here for the first inaugural event of the Home Builders Association of Greater Cincinnati's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. I want to thank Christina Giarmati for helping put this together, and all the committee members. And if I could please ask for a show of hands, how many people here are members of the DEI committee of the HBA? Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you all very much. And now I'd also like to ask how many people here would like to be a member of the DEI committee? And if you're not currently one and would like to be involved, I'd ask you to please talk to one of us after we've concluded this part of the event. We'd love to have more participation and more ideas how to have more events like this and have more fruitful and positive discussions. So, my name is TJ Ackerman, and I am the current president of the Home Builders Association, and it is my honor to introduce Mr. Mel Gravely here. I'm very honored to have him here to join us tonight. I'd like to thank Mr. Bertie Ray, the owner of Switch, for offering this wonderful venue, for the idea of holding this event, and for helping us put this on. So, Bertie, thank you. This is a fantastic showroom with lots of many wonderful things in the lighting and furniture space, so I encourage you to take a look, and feel free to take something home with you for a small investment, perhaps. So, Mel came to my attention from a wonderful article in the Cincinnati Business Courier about his new book, Dear White Friend. And this touched home for me. I was able to grow up in a rather diverse situation with a number of friends of color and different minority status, and always felt very comfortable in those settings. But yet, the older I get, the more aware I become of the many unconscious biases that I have, and are not really sure how they translate out into the real world and into normal settings. And so this book really helps to start to help me to understand how the world is viewed through different eyes, through different races, in different situations. And it's very apparent that Mel has given a lot of thought, a lot of personal perseverance, and a lot of integrity into this book. And it's my pleasure to introduce him and to ask him to share some of his background, some information, and I'm going to be able to ask him some questions, and then would welcome questions from the audience. And as Mel has said, there are no wrong questions, and any question that's really tough will be helpful to ponder and help ask it right back to you. So feel free to ask, and we'll try to do our best. So Mel?
Well, thanks. Most of the people in this room claim to be his good friend, and I see why. We talked on the phone a couple weeks ago, and it's just easy to talk to TJ. It's easy to feel welcome and warm, and so I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm Mel Gravely. My wife and I and our daughter came here in 1993. I've done a number of things, but I currently am a majority owner and CEO of Diversity Construction. We are a commercial builder in town. We'll do this year a little over $107, $108 million of construction volume, about 105 people. But think Procter & Gamble, Fifth Third Bank, Duke Energy, 3CDC down and over the Rhine. I probably left off. Oh, and a lot of healthcare. So Cincinnati Children's, UC Health, we do a lot of that kind of buildings. That's the business that I run. I am an active civic leader. I'm on a ton of boards, way too many, my wife says. But it's because this city has given so much to us that I feel that giving back to it is easy. I like to say, the city hugged us, I hugged it back. And my wife is just as committed and just as busy. As a matter of fact, she's out this evening as well on a board she's on. So we're very, very active. And I think that's where this book comes from, that I have been in white spaces since middle school. When you get a chance to read the book, you'll hear the story. And I've got a lot of good white friends. And we've got a problem with race in our country. And I think that intersection is where I start. This title is it's not sarcasm, it's for real. Like, I'm writing to good friends of mine. I'm writing in a tone, in a heartfelt kind of interest, like I'm talking to a person who is my friend and maybe have been my friend for many, many years. I was blessed enough to have, 40 or so friends actually read the book as I was writing it. And they helped me get the pitch right. They helped me get the tone right. And my black friends were just as instrumental in saying, okay, you've gone too far now. You need to be a little tougher about that one. So I'm excited to be here with you this evening. And as TJ said, there's no question that I'm not willing to opine on. If I've got to answer or thought about it, I'll give it to you. But most of all, TJ, I'm trying to infect the nation with a new way to talk about race. I want to give us the tools, the mindset, the space to talk about race. Because I'm confident if we talk about it in better ways, with higher quality conversation, that we can solve for it together and we can start to close the gap. I think it's going to take generations, but it's not like waiting is going to make that journey any shorter, so we might as well get started now. So that's kind of the approach I'm taking.
One of the things that you said in the book is that we can't trust when we learn about race.
Yeah.
So why can't we? And what are the implications of that answer?
Yeah, I don't think we can trust what we learned about race, because if you think about how we really learned about race, it's kind of like people learn about sex, And that usually isn't all that healthy of ways, like, what your buddy told you, what you saw in that movie, that's probably not, So the reason I say that, if you think about what we learned in school, which is where you would think you might have a chance to learn about this, is really it had these kind of episodes that had race in them. There was a slavery period where we enslaved human beings in this country, most of them being black. And then slavery ended, and it was ended by whites. Right? So even that's a message. And then we move forward. The next time we really talk about it, we're in the civil rights era. And Malcolm was good, Malcolm was bad, and Martin Luther King was good. And then we were all equal because we signed the Civil Rights Amendment. And the truth is, there's a lot of crap that went on between, and there's a lot of lingering stuff that stays with us today. Psychological stuff, narrative stuff, economic stuff. And so, how can we trust what we've learned? Because we really didn't have a real deep dive into it. And then we end up in our echo chambers. And what we really learn about race is the narratives that we're told. Right now, it's easy for me to look at whites and say, no, you got a messed up narrative. But it's equally true, so do I. Right? And it's these narratives that we've got to play out and talk about so that you can understand my narrative. I can understand yours, and we can come to some place where my narrative is not completely right. Yours isn't either. We can have a common narrative that we're starting to build together. Everybody following what I'm saying? And it sounds corny, but if we're staying in echo chambers and talking about race, you're talking about it with your people, and I'm talking about it with my people, the narrative just continues. And we got to figure out a way to get to something different. So that's why I say we can't trust movies. That's a long answer. I'm gonna be shorter with my answers next time, Tuesday.
You know what helps me out because I don't have to say as much. Keep going.
So I'm gonna shorten them next time. Next one's gonna be short. Watch. Go.
Well,
no, that's the answer.
Thank you all very much for coming this evening, and the bar is open. So, in terms of race in the nation's history, how do you think about this, and how do you expand about the explanation of how to look at teachings of critical race theory?
Yeah.
And how can that be understood better and in a less prejudiced way, in an appropriate way?
Yeah. You know what's amazing? This critical race theory thing is baffling to me. And I'm talking about my smart friends. I'm not talking about, the ones you already know aren't that smart, not that thoughtful. I'm talking about those thoughtful ones. They're bringing this, well, what about critical race theory? And so here's my new response. It's a great question. What is critical race theory? I've never gotten an answer. Not one time. Because we don't know. What we know is we don't like it. Right? Now I'm saying this person saying it to me is like, well, I don't know about that critical race theory thing. And so I think when you go unpack critical race theory, what you'll find is that none of us are against knowing that, if that is factual. And I've not seen anything in my investigation of critical race theory that's problematic. But I think we've got the narrative going, and there's some political interest behind it. And if we don't dig under the covers and question it, I can say the same thing about the voting rights changes that are going on in Texas and Georgia and other states. My white friends are saying, I thought that was a response to some of the loosening that we did during COVID. I said, no, go pay attention. The Secretary of State no longer even confirms elections in Georgia anymore. Like, that doesn't happen because they didn't like what the Secretary of State did in Georgia. So what I'm saying about critical race theory, I'll say about a number of things. Go understand it for yourself. Because if it sounds like something that's controversial, at least before you repeat it in an echo chamber, go read 2 articles on it. And I'm not saying read 2 articles that agree with it. Read 2 articles, maybe one that agrees and one that doesn't. Get to the facts of what is it. Because again, I don't know where the boogeyman is behind the critical race theory door, but apparently someone does. And I just don't know what it is. That's the truth.
That's a very fair answer.
Yeah.
That's very honest.
Well, and if you Google it, I think you'll find plenty of opportunities to read about it. So don't worry about it. I think Bernie Ray's a very good friend of mine. I put him in the top 4 or 5 people that I spend my time with personally. And I think even he is challenged by me sometimes with my search for objectivity. I just don't accept what people tell me anymore. And when it comes to race, I never accept it on any side. I want to go look at it myself because I want to have my own opinion and I want it to be informed. I don't want someone to say, well, to ask me that question, well, what is critical race theory, and me be for it, right? I want to know what it is so I can really recite it. So I would say to you, I'm always looking for 2 sides. I'm always looking to understand, why are they doing that? Who's winning? Who stands to gain power? Who stands to lose power? I want to understand that, so I can't give you a source. As a matter of fact, I would say if you only have a source, that's a problem, right? In my book, I call for this kind of a policy center, which would be that bastion of objectivity. But I haven't found one yet. Because usually somebody's grinding an axe somewhere. They're advocating for something. And then once you start advocating, then I got to start questioning why you're advocating. And, not just what you're advocating for is bad. I just want to, now I need to go understand it from a space that is usually kind of one-sided, and that bothers me. Did that answer your question?
It does.
I'm not getting any better, getting shorter though.
No, that's okay then.
Next time, next question is going to be shorter. Watch, come.
So,
No.
I struggle trying to find accurate sources, and I'm always searching.
Yeah.
So
And I think if you cross-reference enough of them, that you'll start saying, okay, right? And where's the data coming from, right? So,
Fair. So, on the cover of the book, you say in it that my friend, and I believe you are a racist, and you seem to make this a really essential theme of the book overall.
yeah.
What do your black friends say about this statement?
Most of them say I'm wrong. Yeah, most of them say I'm wrong. What he's referring to is right on the cover I say, my friend, I don't think you're a racist, I think is what it says, something like that. And you might wonder, why did I say that? Well, there's two reasons. One, my white friends needed to hear that, because I had a friend saying, I'm up to letter 6, and you finally told me I'm not a racist. That's way too late, because I was waiting for you to call me a racist, right? So I was like, well, let's just get it on the cover and get it out of the way. That's one reason I did it. The second, to make the book more accessible, the second is, if they are what I define as a racist, and we should talk about that, then how could they also be my friend? And so then now I'm lying. Now I'm disingenuous. I'm writing to somebody I think's a racist. That means they're not really my friend. I should change the title. It should be like letters to some people that are racist or something, right? I mean, it should be authentic. So that's the second thing. But I honestly don't believe my friends are racist. I think they have an echo chamber. I think they have a path, a journey they've walked down that gave them a certain sense of who they are and how they got there. I think that they have been screwed up in a country that screwed up this topic for many, many years, and we continue to do so. I think we are all victims of all of that, but I don't think that makes you racist. A racist to me is someone who wakes up every day intentionally doing harm to people of color. Most of my friends, none of my friends meet that measure. Now, I've got black friends, though, that's not their definition. Their definition is someone who says stupid stuff that is, in their opinion, racist. The bigger context for me is not whether a person's a racist or not. It is, does racism exist? Because racism, in my opinion, doesn't need a racist. Racism is happening. And if we don't intentionally break those cycles, break those systems, confront those issues, I don't need a racist to keep racism going. If we took all the racists and shot them to the moon, we'd still have racism. So that, to me, is where we got to go spend our time to find out to understand how this gap got so big, why it persists today, what are the systems that perpetuate it, whether it's home ownership or if it's access to K through 12 education, health care. That's what we've got to go solve for. And quite honestly, if people aren't racist and they just go about their lives, that gap never closes. Racism continues.
So can you define racism for me in the terms that you would like to see it?
Yeah, I would. There are policies and practices that disproportionately constrain, hold back, negatively impact black people in particular, but other people of color also. And you didn't mention this yet, but I framed in the book, as it was framed to me in a training education, how I see race in our country. And it's a little crass. Can I say it?
Please.
I wrote it, so I guess I might as well say it, right? I think we've got a racial construct in our country to have whites on top, blacks on the bottom, and everybody else in between. And that's kind of how we roll in this country. And everybody in between is not white. So they're all catching a little bit of different kind of racial hell, right? But blacks are catching, like we built the bottom of this thing with blacks, and so we work to keep that construct kind of, and when whites need more whites, they make people who weren't white more white. You follow what I'm saying? And they've done it throughout time. So, all these folks with ancestors that came here and couldn't speak English and all that, and they treated you like hell until they needed you, and then they made you white. Now you're white. They can change the voting. And it happens a little bit with our Cuban population, just a little bit, right? When you get fair-skinned enough, they'll make you white. And so that construct stays in our country. And that frames how we go about things, and I would argue that it's got to frame how we solve for them too. Because if you say, some of my friends say, well, you keep highlighting black people, what about other people of color? And I say, I think we're all catching a bit of hell, right? But if you solve for all people in any situation, blacks will always come out on the bottom. because blacks on the bottom, whites on the top, everybody else in between. Everybody follow what I'm saying? So if I say I'm going to have a minority situation, I'm going to reach for minority, great. What you'll find, you'll have whites on top, blacks on the bottom, and everybody else in between. So as you're reaching for minority, as you gradiate up, I hope everybody's following me, it'll be easier to get Asian Indians and Asians involved than it will be blacks. And so I'm saying we've got to solve for it in a way that realizes this is the construct that we built. I didn't build it, so don't be mad at me for saying that. I'm just telling you that's how it got built. And I'm just saying if we don't solve for it that way, we'll always have this gap that we can't close. God dang it, I did it again. Okay, give me another. Give me another.
Okay, in relation to that.
Here's a good one, like you never saw these questions before.
Yeah, I've read them once, but I liked it. You refer in the book to the pillars of racial equality. And can you define for us what those pillars are and why you are basing the entire set of solutions just on those?
Yeah, those two pillars are acknowledgement. That means that before we can get on a path toward equity, we've got to acknowledge that we built the system the way it is. We've got to acknowledge it has created and still creates gaps along racial lines. That, again, that it was intentional, that it was systematic. We've got to acknowledge that. Now, you might say, well, why do you have to acknowledge it? Because when we're not acknowledging it, we're in essence saying, you have a problem. I'm good. Acknowledging says, yeah, actually this sucks. I got a problem with you. We both have a problem now. Because acknowledging it says I own it with you, right? But right now, there's a lot of people saying, they're not acknowledging that history. They're saying, hey man, slavery was so long ago, you should get over it. And Jim Crow was so long ago, and if you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that stuff, we're all equal now. This is an equal country. And I'm saying you got to be on crack. You just have to be doing some kind of drug if you believe that's true. And I'm doing it again, it's going to be long, so hang in there. But that acknowledgement part is very, very important because it is in essence saying, I get it. I've done my work, my research, I understand, I get it. We've created this gap. The second pillar is we've got to decide. And in the book, controversially, I say we've got to decide like Malcolm X. And what Malcolm X said is, by any means necessary. I had white friends read the book and say, man, you can't say that. Can't say that. You got to back that down. And I thought about it. I thought I probably should back that down. Then I thought, no, I think I mean what I mean. And here's why I say that. I don't mean by any means necessary, including violence. And my white friends know I don't mean that. I don't want to steal and pillage. And I don't want to. But I do mean that there can be no limits on what we will do to bring racial equity to people. Because it is supposed to be an inalienable right of this country. So there'll be no negotiation. There'll be no budget limit. There'll be no that's too far. There'll be no that's that's reverse racism. There won't be that. There'll be, we got to get this solved by any means it takes. Now, again, I understand some people are like bristling right now saying, Mel, that's too far. Well, I don't know how to say that it's too far when I think about how we got here, how the disproportionate treatment drove to where we are. I didn't set that up. And either we acknowledge that we did as a nation, and I'm including myself, we did it as a nation. We got to do it together as a nation too. And so that's why I say acknowledge and decide. And if you don't acknowledge and decide, I am not going to work with you. That doesn't mean you won't go do some cool stuff, but I'm not going to work with you because I'm wasting my time. Because you're always going to want to pull up short. You're always going to want to explain it away. You're always going to want to diminish the impact. I don't have time for that. I need you to, now what we do together can be different, but I need you to acknowledge it and decide. And I'll wait until you do. I'll catch you next year. I'll come back to you and ask, have you gotten it? Do you see it? Have you read enough? Have you seen enough? But those two pillars, they're in the way. Can I just give one more example? Because hell, I've already made it long now, right? In 2000, and I've lost track of time, 20, when the coronavirus, was that March of 20 when we shut everything down? and we're all crapping our clothes. I know I was. I took my team into a bunker and we were doing like disaster scenario planning. Like we knew who went first and second, who was left to turn the lights off. I mean, we were disastrous planning, right? Losing our minds. And our government, within like 13 weeks, created the CARES, is it called CARES? Was that the whole thing, the CARES Act? Yeah, and they had inside of it this little thing called PPP. Then we ended up spending like $2.4 trillion on. No discussion of, well, there'll be fraud. Oh, there'll be waste. What will they do with the money? What? No discussion. And then the mind-blowing part. You got to write it like it was not taxed. I said, wait, you're kidding, right? Like the government's gonna give me money, and if I make money that year, I don't have to pay taxes on the part that came from PP. So I start telling my white friends, is this how it's been for you all along? like this is like amazing to me. They were like, trust me, man, it ain't been this good. Here's my point. Here's my point. It was the largest transfer of wealth from the government to the private sector in our lifetime. And we moved so fast, and we didn't care about certain things. So don't tell me that our nation can't solve gaps in income, gaps in wealth, gaps in home ownership, gaps in education. Don't tell me that if we acknowledge and decide, well, we can't figure out, but what we've got here, well, we got limits. Well, whoa. Can't go that far. That would be too far. Well, the PPP thing went all the way. Now, I'm not mad at the PPP. I don't want you to walk away and say, Mel was anti-PPP. I love the PPP. Okay? I'm just saying to you, our nation can respond when they've acknowledged and decided something's going to happen. And we saw it, and since it was so recent, I use that example.
Look, that it's too late to talk about equality.
Yep.
However, people struggle with the term equity.
Yep.
So would you clarify those terms for
Yes.
us?
Yeah.
Tell us why they're so important.
Well, they're critical that we understand them. And so first, equality says we're all equal. We start at the same time, same resources, same opportunities. You will get there by your determination, your aspiration, some luck, some skill. It's all equal. I'm down with equality when it's real. Equity is saying, I realize that what Mel just said is not true. That we didn't all get there at the same time with the same resources. And so equity is saying, I've got to do something that allows others to get themselves in the game in a way that we can then one day talk about equality. Because now we really are somewhat at par. The challenge is when you hear the word equity, I think what people translate is that means you want me to give something that I've earned. I get that. And I understand why they don't like that. I wouldn't like that either. That's the empathy part of I understand why my white friends feel this way. But if indeed we have this gap, and if indeed you don't want to give what you've earned, I get that, then help me figure out how I close the gap. But don't just say to me, oh, we're all equal. That's bullshit, and you know it is. But you can't accept the fact that we've got these imbalances, so your default is we can go to equality. I used the Monopoly game in the book for this analogy. I love the Monopoly game. I want to crush the competition. What I love about it is equal. Start with the same money, same $200 every time you pass go. You got a different little symbol, but that doesn't, if you got the thimble or the car, doesn't mean, right? It's a little luck because you roll the dice. Got some skill, some risk tolerance. You want to buy a house, buy hotels, right? It's all great. But the analogy I use in the book is, what if you had 9 people playing Monopoly? The first 3 got to start at the first minute. They get to play for 45 minutes. Going around, pass and go, getting $200. Buying up houses, buying up hotels, experiencing the game. Sometimes you land, you go to jail, but you get it, right? Then the next 3 get to start. A little behind the 8 ball, some houses and hotels already taken, property already bought up, but they still have some opportunity there. Then the last 3 come in. By the time the last 3 come in, guess what's going on? All the property's bought. All of it's gone. We're talking about 2 hours in now, right? So I started with the same money, but they've been getting $200 and they've been having an opportunity to make more money. And now here's what's worse. When I land on their property, guess what happened? I gotta pay rent. So now it's costing me more to go around the track than it's costing you, than it cost you at the beginning, than it cost you right now. And so what's best for me, hang in there with me, is to just go to jail. Well, at least I stop spending money, right? I'm just chilling now. Now I don't want to make that, don't take that analogy too like literal, right? But my point is, when people say I don't understand the difference between equity and equality, what I think they struggle with is what they think they have to give up. But the concept, I just gave you the concept, you get it. We're in this place right now, and the data, and there's a ton of data in that book, the data is not lying to you. Even if you don't like my data on wealth gap, find your own. It'll be staggeringly ridiculous. If you don't like mine on home ownership, find your own. Staggeringly, if you don't like it on size of business, you'll find your own. You'll never find any that says we're equal. So people say, TJ, they say, well, Mel, what about you? You're doing pretty well. And I am, so don't cry for me. But here's the difference. First of all, don't make it about an individual. We're talking about a macro system here, right? That's number one, because we got billionaires and all kind of stuff that are black. So people are making it through. What I'll say about my situation particularly is, first, I didn't start making money until the last 7 years. I'm talking about real money. My peers, where I'm hanging out, 7 generations, 5 generations, 4 generations, multiple generations of opportunity to make money. My economic outpatient care to friends, family that I should help. Much different than my peers. And so make a little money, but I give a lot to friends and family and peers. So what I'm saying to you is still not equitable. Now I'm doing fine. Oh, please, God, I wouldn't have written this book if I wasn't doing fine, because this could kill my career. This could be it, right? 2021 could be it for me. But what I'm saying is that you can't look at an individual and say, well, just do what they did. A, you don't know what they did. B, you don't know where they really are, right? And it's still not equitable. So this equality, equity thing is a challenge for people, but I think we gotta, God dang it. Ask me one more question.
You sure?
Yes, just one more. I'm going to get it right this time. Watch. Go. Okay. It's Christina, right?
Christina, yes.
Yeah.
First of all, I appreciate you putting yourself out there.
Yeah, thanks.
And if you were to give a new committee that's working on DEI, if you were to give them purpose and maybe some measurable goals,
Oh, boy.
what would that be? What would that look like?
Well, I'd go to the powers that I have available to me. I'd go to my sphere of influence. And I would be intentional about my actions within my sphere of influence. Let me give you an example. At Triversity, we buy through a lot of subcontractors. I have a sphere of influence on who is subs on our jobs. So I have asked my team to be very intentional about including particularly black companies and in general minority companies. So when they come to me, they got to give me 2 numbers. Here's our minority number. Here's our black number. Because I know black's on bottom, white's on top, everybody's in between. So I would say look at your sphere of influence and think about what you have influence over and set metrics around that. We spend a lot of money with subcontractors because we're general contractor, construction manager. We also give a lot in the community. So you'll find that we over-index on groups that are particularly focused on people of color, people in poverty, and black people. Some people might have a superpower of hiring people. They may hire a lot of people. Maybe that's a metric. So I would look at your sphere of influence and set your metrics around your sphere of influence. I hope that helped. Yep. Thanks for the encouragement, man. All right, go ahead.
It was a softball.
It was a nice one. Thank you, Christina. I gave her that one to give to me.
Would you define for us your vision of what equity looks like?
Yes. What does equity look like? Equity looks like, first of all, philosophically, it looks like a world where there's no constraints based on race. That doesn't mean a world has no constraints. No constraints based on race. Second, though, I believe we'll be getting to equity when population percentages look like wealth percentages, homeowner percent, like when my stuff looks like white people's stuff, when black people's stuff looks like white people's stuff, home ownership, education level, wealth level, then we'll be gone. But we got to get at that, right?
But our legacy.
Our legacy is that we set the stage. I told someone earlier today in a session that, listen, I'm only asking people to move about 2-3% a year. I'm going to try to get 20% change, but before I die, I'll hand over a legacy of 20% change with some momentum behind it and hope the next generation can get the next 20. And if we go 6 generations out, we might actually start approaching something that looks like that. I feel pretty good about that. That was better. Much better.
No, there's a lot of meaning in every answer, right? Are there any questions?
He's super encouraging.
Surush?
No, so I think we need to kind of look at the past and allow the past to kind of guide us into the future.
Okay.
So I'm going to sketch a couple of things for you now, and I want you to respond to them.
Okay.
Think about the commodity space, right? Think about when cars were introduced. You had an era in which you had just one car. It was Ford Model T,
Right.
one color, black.
Yeah.
Right? That was our world, right? Compare that world with today. We have 3 dozen car companies. They have variety, right? From economy to compact to mid-size to full-size to luxury to SUV and to minivan and different layers in between. And, right? I hope you agree with me that today's auction in terms of variety is much more fulfilling from a human experience than the Model T era, right? Because we have appreciation.
Sure.
Or think about the food space, right? Imagine the best meal that you like. They provided you breakfast, lunch, dinner, every day the rest of your life. Which one is more fulfilling? The one that is just that one meal compared to, you think food, you say, oh, I can have French, Italian, Ethiopian, Indian, Jamaican, you name it, every cuisine in between. To me at least, the latter is more fulfilling than just restaurant. How is it that as a society in the commodity space, we have appreciation for the variety, but the human space we don't? How did we get there? Because everything else, we have appreciation for variety is only in the human space that we don't. How do we change that psyche? It's all about, in the beginning, we said one word. It was mindset.
Yeah.
How do we go from this fixed mindset to a growth mindset that what is good in the commodity space is also good in the human space?
Yeah, I love the analogy, but I struggle to make the connection, and let me just tell you why. Because what drives me to appreciate variety in my meal, and variety in my car, different drivers to how I appreciate human beings. Because human beings and our existence is based in a framework of power, influence, and money. And when I layer that on top, if I have it, all I want to do is make sure I keep having it. I don't mean that doesn't make me philanthropic. I'm just saying I want to be on top. I want to, right? I don't, right? And so it makes me different, to think differently than I would when I'm talking about my car and my consumer kind of thing. Because I'm not really consuming this difference. I'm experiencing, but I'm not consuming it. The other thing I would say to you is that we're getting played by our politicians. Our politicians are feeding us this difference, which makes it harder for us to have a growth mindset. do believe the politicians are feeding us because it feeds their power. They're lying to us or telling us a part of the truth, and we're buying it because we're too lazy to go do the homework to find out they're lying to us. But I will buy into this, that our opportunity in this growth mindset is proximity. Let me tell you what I mean. The closer we get to one another, the more I see our commonalities. But it's hard for me to see the commonality. If you're over there, I'm over here, we never really talk. We don't really know each other. All I have is my perception of you. But if I get to experience you, you're not so bad. Sense of humor, high level of energy, connects with people very, very well. We just met in person, but I know that about you from what I've already experienced. So proximity and empathy, I think, allow us to get there, but we got to start practicing that. So I would invite us to be more proximate with each other. Drop yourself into situations where you're the only, so that you can say, oh man, this feels a little uncomfortable, right? Build relationships because I think then we get a chance to value it, because now I'm consuming it. Now I can move it back to your model of cars and meals. Now I'm consuming it, I'm like, I kind of like that. I've enjoyed it. Instead of I'm in my silo and I'm judging it based on something I have no idea about. So I think we still have the opportunity to go back to those things as a true economist would suggest, but I think our path there is a little bit different just because of how we set it up from a power, influence, and money standpoint. And I'll throw politics in there as a little dirty secret as well. I hope that...
Yeah, that's very insightful.
The young lady right behind you?
Oh, back here.
No, right there.
Oh.
And then back there.
So you talked about the narrative.
Yeah.
To me, that is key. Because to your point, the slavery is over and now we're here.
Right.
I have a lot of white friends too. My husband's white, and and I know he loves me, but I guarantee you his perception just is that, it's not the same as my perception.
Yeah.
But think about the amount of years and effort it took to create the narrative that's here.
Right.
It's going to take that much to get rid of.
Yeah.
So the Daughters of the Confederacy, what did they do? Might have lost. They said, yeah, we're not going to give up.
Right.
They were instrumental in putting up tons of Confederate statues. And we came to think, as a society, well, it's okay. They still were good people. They were just fighting. It was a narrative that went with that. Right? Just like Central Park in New York. Right? Very affluent African Americans. Doesn't tell you how the city came in and just took over that area, turned it into a park, and displaced these people. And they didn't get, so when you start bringing back the real history, it changes the narrative, and I think it opens people's minds like, okay, so this is how systemic racism.
Yeah, I was with you until you said it opens people's minds, because I'm not so sure it's that easy. Because I've had people say, yeah, I get that, but that was so long ago. That was just so long ago. But to your point of starting to change narratives is part of why I wrote the book. Because I just want you to pause for a second and take another look, right? Because we can change the narratives one by one, slowly but surely. Again, I'm using 2%. 2% a year, I'm just trying to change the narrative 2%. Change attitudes 2%. Where we get frustrated and burned out is when we think we're going to fix it in a cycle, in a class, in an initiative, in a mentoring program, in a whatever. We get disappointed because we think we're going to fix it. People's identity is tied up in their narrative. I don't want to give up my identity, so I can't ask someone to give up theirs without us coming to some place where we're having a dialogue where we find ourselves together. So, I get that people say I'm too accommodating to white people. What I am is I'm accommodating to human beings who have been on the road themselves and created a self-image that I can't ask them to destroy. I can ask them to enlighten. I can ask them to moderate. I can ask them to see a new way. I can ask them over time. And what you'll find is, over time, they'll see things that they didn't used to see. They'll be like, damn, that looks like racism. Like, we should go do, but it takes that kind of time, and we've got to have that kind of patience. That's why acknowledge and decide is so important, because it's going to take a long time. Are we in or not? Is the real question. Because it ain't going to get shorter if we no, I'm not in right now. Okay, well, the road is just as long. If we wait 5 years, it's just 5 years later. The road didn't get shorter, right? It's kind of like prices for commodities and building right now. That stuff ain't coming back down. Y'all might as well build now. Tell your customers, just build it now. That's what they ask me. Should I wait till next year? Yeah. It is going to cost you more, but you can wait till next year.
I have questions, Al. Thank you again.
I'm sorry. We did say her, then we'll come back to you.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Because she looked like she was about to jump on me. It's going to get ugly.
No, so.
TJ's supposed to be managing this, by the way.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job.
So I'm looking for kind of a different perspective, more of an advisory question. So myself and my sister, we went to Winton Woods, city school.
Yeah.
It was always a mix of everything. You know what I mean? Growing up, there was never really a racial issue. We had, Indians, Chinese, we had everybody. You know what I mean? So that was kind of unknown to me until I kind of got older. I never had any of those experiences. But as you get older, you get out to the real world, you come across it.
Very simple. That I actually have to give advice to. And you know what's really beautiful? They now actually want it, which is kind of brand new. Your daughter calls me every day now. I'm like, wow, this is great. One, I would say, I would give you what I was told. Show up. Show up in places that might feel uncomfortable, and be willing to engage in relationship with people. And over time, A, you'll get more comfortable being there, and B, you'll build relationships that you'll cherish for life. Because most human beings are good people. They just don't know us. We don't know each other very well. So one would be show up and be willing to engage. The other, and I'm hot on this right now, is I really examine the top 10 people I spend my time with. And if you're the smartest one, if you're the most accomplished one, if you're the most driven one, if you're the most focused one, you ain't going very far. Someone's got to be around you that makes you feel like, ooh, I got to pedal faster. I got to go study a little more. I got to build my network bigger. I got to be willing to go do something. Right now in my life, the people I spend the most time with, they're all super smart, but they're also like doing stuff and accomplishing stuff. And I don't want their stuff, but it makes me say, oh, I want my stuff a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? It just creates an energy. Those would be the two things I would say to you, because where you're going is going to be so tied to who your mate is. It's very important. And your mate, your partner, however you want to describe that, and who the top 10 people in your life are. That's a big contributor to where we're going. And that's what I would suggest to you.
So is there a difference in that prior to the pandemic and now, and it's all still?
Yeah, the pandemic did a lot to change how we work. And I think that the social justice conversation is not going away. So there's some differences on how tolerant people of color are going to be in the workplace going forward. But it hasn't changed the pathway to what I would call success and fulfillment and contribution and impact. And I think those lie in the two things I told you.
Thank you.
That's one man's opinion, by the way, just one man. Dan?
Yeah, I just had.
Oh, sorry, Dan. Yes, Dan, you're next. I was like, who else? Get out there.
I'm related to the question, but just kind of bring it a little closer to home as far as our industry is concerned.
Yeah.
Historically, it's been a white who's in the business, so I'm going to be in the business, and obviously, we have very few people of color or even women for that matter.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much a white industry, a white male industry.
Yeah.
And knowing that you're in construction yourself, you're in commercial,
Yeah.
what can we do as an industry to, for lack of a better term, colorize our
This isn't easy, and it's not short term. But I go back to axis of intentionality. So, who are you hiring, nurturing, promoting, intentionally? I'm talking about even if you got to go back to high school and put that much time in. Where are you spending dollars intentionally to help businesses that might be supporting your business grow and prosper? Just as a quick example, every light in my house, Tom, you can tell me, it's right here somewhere. Every light in my house comes from here. Hired an interior designer, I don't really care where you get the rest of the stuff, you get all the lights from Switch. That's intentional. They didn't really like that much. I really don't care. It's intentional. So our intentionality around things like that. But I'm going to give you the story of Triversity Construction. I'm going to make it very, very brief. Triversity Construction was founded in 2005. There were 3 owners, 2 black people. 3 owners, Tri, that's where they got the Tri from. 2 black people and Messer Construction. You guys ever heard of Messer Construction? The largest local commercial. And the CEO at that time said, I'm intentional, I want to grow a sizable, minority-led construction company in Cincinnati. So we started Triversity. I wasn't there at the time. I bought Triversity in 2009 because it struggled with the first set of owners. Nothing wrong with that, it struggled a bit. Pete had acknowledged and decided, by any means necessary, Pete Strange, we're going to keep going. So I buy the company, and his goal was $100 million. What did I tell you we'd do this year? $107 million this year. Because he was intentional about who he partnered with. Now, there's a downside. We now compete with Messer. Not on $80 million projects, but if they come under $20 million a project, I'm going to try to kick their heads in because that's what we do. Are you that serious? Who are you partnering with? Do you go into business with someone to say, hey, I'll support you some back-end stuff while you grow your organization? Intentionality, because we got to do something to bridge the current gap while we fix the infrastructure that made the gap exist in the first place. Everybody follow me? You got to do some artificial stuff. You got to do some axes of intentionality. You used to call it affirmative action, but that's a bad word now. You can't use that word anymore. So I call it axes of intentionality because that sounds better. But it's really affirmative action. You got to be affirming your actions around certain things. And so I would just ask, if you're doing a development deal and you're developing 60 homes, 150 homes, 300 homes, who are the investor pool? Did you get intentional about saying, hey, I'm going to carve out 10% of this deal. I'm going to find some black friends that's got $5.15. They can put, I'm exaggerating, but they can put it in a deal. Now they're building wealth. You do the next deal, they get a little bigger. And how intentional are we being in our industry to do that? So I would just say to you, those are some thoughts, but there are no silver bullets. This doesn't get fixed in a transaction in a year, in a day, in a month. It just doesn't. I wish it did. If you have one, I'll take it. But I haven't found any silver bullets. We got work to do. Let's do it. And we're going to struggle at it, as Pete Strange did when he started Triversity. It went 5 years. It was a little bit of a mess. I think Pete's pretty proud of where we are right now. Now, our question is, can we be the first company that is black-owned in the history of Cincinnati? We're already by far the largest ever. Can we get to the second generation? So now we're multi-generational. Can we get to the second generation? It's yet to be decided, right? We don't know yet. We're trying, we're working hard on it. I'm obsessed with it. But we got to get to the second generation, because if not, then here's some more black people coming on later. They got to start over. Right? And we really didn't make much progress. Did that answer you? Yeah. It was a long one too, Dan. Sorry.
No, that's good.
I think all my answers tonight are just long.
But they're not simple questions. And there's
Thank you so much, Dan, for supporting me. Other questions from the audience? I don't fish at all. I went fishing one time with my buddy who fishes all the time, and it lasted about 15 minutes, and I got back in the car and slept until 8. But I am told that is a hotbed for stuff out there. Yes, but I don't fish. Something about the waiting. Can I shoot it? Can I just get a little more? Something about the waiting. But but he loves it, and I wish I could fish with him because he's still my best friend, and his passion is there, and I can't fish. But thanks for asking. Yes.
I guess I'll be from the other side.
Oh, there's another side.
How do you start the conversation with, your minority peers or friends to, how do I say it, get them to understand or be more comfortable in these types of situations so that we can hire a more diverse, like if it is my job to find the more diverse clients or to make our company more diverse, there are times where they're just not comfortable in that situation because they are the only minority there, right?
Yeah.
So, me being used to being, I've grown up and I've been in that. However, there are many people that I know who are not comfortable with making that transition.
Yeah, I know. And some people just think it's just more effort than it should be, and so they opt out. I wish I had a good answer for you. I don't. But I get this a lot, and I don't know what to do about it. I tell you what I've tried. I invite my black friends to white stuff sometimes, and they usually run shrieking from fear. But I think a buddy system can be helpful because once you get to critical mass, it's better. If I walk in a room, there's 300 people there, and there's 2 black people, it's just a difficult situation, right? It's just emotional. You're just like, really? Like again? But if I can get up to like 7 or 8 even, which still sounds ridiculous, right? It's not even double digits, but I'm like, well, if a fight breaks out, I get 2 or 3 minutes to get to the door, right? So I just think I don't have a good answer for you. I will just tell you that it's not easy, and I understand it. Like, I really do understand it. I do ask my white friends to be more, like, invite people, but people don't want to go, right? They just, I wish I had a better answer. That's why the young lady asked what would I do. I put myself out there. And if it's uncomfortable, be uncomfortable. I have a prayer that I recite before I walk into certain rooms because I know what I'm about to go walk into. And I'm 57 years old, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. I'm relatively well known in this community. I've got great white friends, and I still say that prayer when I get out of the car. It's almost always at the Queen City Club, too. It's like something about that. Something about walking in there. Gotta get myself straight, But I will tell you, though, by putting yourself out, the benefit is I've really got great friends. And to be successful in the world, somebody's got to want you to win. None of us are successful on our own. Somebody's got to want you to win. And the more friends you have, that's why TJ's got so many friends. Because, you need friends and people that grow to trust you and want you to win. And it's hard to do that if you won't engage. But I know why you won't, right? I don't know why people not you, but I know why people won't. I get it. I get sick of it too. That was an unfulfilling answer, wasn't it? Other questions, because TJ's got more probably. And I'm going to be all long with it.
So I'd like to put out something else to get your response. And that is, you were talking about changing identity being very important because we need to crawl, which is creating equity before we can even think about hallucinating what we call. That's hallucinating, right? I mean, it's very important. So, and you said that change of identity is important, which I agree with. And also you also mentioned the word patience. Is it patience that is more important or empathy? Just hear me out. I'm 65, okay? And I teach the course called Economics of Discrimination. And what I've learned is basically the following after teaching it all these years. Definitely, the people on the receiving end of discrimination are victims. Past decade or two, I've come to conclude that people on a given end are also victims. So I've come to realization that empathy toward that group that is a given end, that discriminates actually is critical if we are to make a transition to help people on the receiving end. Am I thinking wrong?
We are 100% aligned. There's one of the letters in there is about empathy and how important it is. But if I expect to receive empathy, I got to be willing to give empathy. And if I got any pushback from my black friends, it's about this. Why should I give empathy? Well, there's a practical matter that if you don't, it's going to be hard to be connected and friendly. But also, if you expect empathy for real, what is that really saying? You expect someone to understand your walk, to appreciate your journey. Was it such a stretch to say, let me try to appreciate yours? And when you do, it just lowers the temperature. It really does. I'm like, I get it. I know why what you're doing. I see what you got. I know why I'm there now, right? And it connects us in a way that says, man, I feel you. I understand why you wouldn't want to upset me, but have you considered? So now we're in a different. To answer your question, it's going to be. Watch this answer. Yes, totally agree. Empathy is a critical word. Totally agree. Totally agree. And empathy can help me with more patience, understanding, leading to more awareness, all of those things. But empathy, totally agree. I thought she was doing something different.
Yes, everything was okay.
Capturing the moment.
Yes.
Hey, one of the things about all Dan's comment from earlier, homework and being out committee as well. And thanks for doing this. This is fantastic.
My pleasure.
But I think about how big a fan of what I call corner is.
Okay, I'm done. I'll teach you everything else you need to know. We have a division that does drywall. So that gives us a chance to hire people who don't have 4-year degrees and technical degrees. So on my Triversity side of the business, that company's called TCF, Triversity Craft Force. So we can hire people straight out of high school if we want to. And we can teach them everything they need to know. They start as laborers, right? But they can grow. On the Triversity side, they're almost all 4-year degree. So we've got a pretty robust co-op program over there trying to drive at some of the same things. But over here, what am I looking for? Do you want to work hard? Because it is hard work. If you want to work hard, I'm going to make sure you have a living wage, 401k, healthcare insurance from day one. You're going to have all that. You're going to have opportunity. I'm going to guarantee you're going to have opportunity. I just need you to show up and want to work hard. Now, it is hard work. So you say college isn't for everybody. Construction work's not for everybody either, right? So let's not be mad at people who are like, no, doc, it's too cold, too hot, too early, whatever the reasons are. That's just not for me, right? But I will tell you that that's what we're looking for. And there's a program that Children's Hospital and Messer Construction started, the Urban Workforce Development Initiative or something like that, where they're work-hardening people and contractors are hiring from that pool, but they had to be within a certain zip code right around the hospital. It was a hospital's way of trying to systemically change people's lives, to break the chain of poverty through this program. We're the top hirer out of that program. I'm like, give me all of them that come out and say they want to do drywall. Now, we got a washout rate that's about 50% though, because it's not for everybody. It is hard work. They get up early. They work hard. They work double shifts on Saturday, and sometimes it's cold outside. But that's what I'm looking for. Does that help?
Yes.
What you got? Got another question?
Any other questions out here?
Oh, there's one in the back there. Sorry, so sorry about that. Mr. Keys.
So I have a question about, well, really forever, but
Right.
definitely within the last 2 years, politics and race have kind of, people seem to think that you believe one thing about race if you're on this side and another if you're on that
Yes.
side.
Yes.
And inevitably it shows up in families and it just will spill into work.
Right.
How do you think we can move beyond politics and race where you can be on either side and not be racist?
Yeah, I think we're a long way from there because I think our politicians have figured out our hot buttons and they're playing today. But I would say this, I still don't talk about politics. If you read this book, there were some great Donald Trump stories I could have used. Not that they were negative Donald Trump stories. They were just stories. I couldn't use Donald Trump's name. It's just too hot, right? And so I don't talk about race. I do talk about race apparently. I wrote a book about it. But I don't talk about politics at all. Not at all. I will talk about issues, voting rights, for example. let's lead the legislation, right? So what my advice right now is politics is we're being played by politicians, and I resist that. I resist the divisiveness that they're trying to drive. Most of my white friends are Republicans. They're Republicans not because of race. They're Republicans because of money. PPP loans and tax rates, right? Those are their peoples because of money. They don't even, I gave them a list of things that I thought Donald Trump had said that were racist. And they were like, darn, that doesn't sound good, Mel, but I never even noticed it, right? Because it's not like they noticed it like it doesn't matter. They didn't notice it the way we do. So I would just say to you, I don't mess with politics. I don't talk about my party. I don't mess with it. I'm throwing a fundraiser for a politician on Monday. So I guess I do, but not like, I don't talk about it. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I guess that's what you're saying. So, to your point, we've got coding issues that are up. Right? It's like you said, I'm like, I'm going to go out there and see maybe there are issues with mail-in ballots, etc. Well, the state of Utah is the most liberal as far as voting. I mean, you can register by mail-in ballots, not just vote. So I'm thinking, so how in the heck is that okay? But in the state of Ohio, or you can't do a mail-in ballot. There's definitely something there.
Yeah, but again, let's go to intent. The reason they're changing these ballots is not because they don't like people of color. Not ballots. The reason they're changing these rules is not because they don't like people of color. In their minds, it ain't got nothing to do with race. It's about power. They're not racist. In their minds, they're like, I just simply want my people to win. That's what I want. Right? So again, if we go to their intent, now we might say, well, that's racist. Okay, but like in their hearts, they're like, no, I ain't got nothing to do with race. If you're not gonna vote for my guy, I gotta do something to make sure 2% of you, 5% of you, 7% of you don't come to the polls. What does that? That's what I'm going to do. So it's more about power. And but I still believe there's a way to be in this world and not go down the political rabbit hole. I just really do. And in particular, Donald Trump and a few others who are just really good at playing that song. But there's some Democrats too. Black people in the Democratic Party, they got work to do. Because, in my opinion, they've been taken for granted. But again, that's what politicians do. That's why I stay out of the discussion about that.
Don't you also feel not just politics, but also the news and specific channels represent things one way or the other?
Yes, they do.
And one thing, as we know that's true, I was amazed. I actually, in my household, we don't discuss politics because it's not healthy for anyone. The dogs even run out. So we have made that promise not to have political discussions, but what we have done, because I would say, well, didn't you hear this? And it's not even said on the news channel.
Not at all.
And then I was told, well, did you hear this? And I'm like, well, no. So we now watch together at night when we're home together the 6:30 news, but we watch several different channels and we do it back to back. And it's amazing to me how different many of the channels are when it represents things, and not just on the political side, but also bringing to the point of racial issues and how it's presented one way or the other. And it's quite sad. And if you go back to it, we used to be everybody is so tense now. I put out an American flag this summer for Memorial Day on front of my house. And I live in a very multicultural, diverse neighborhood, which is why I chose to build there. I love my neighborhood. And a neighbor across the street who is very much an activist with the black community decided to take a Black Matter sign and face it towards my front door as soon as I put the American flag out. And I did not understand that. I'm very blessed. I've got good resources, good African American black friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why in the world? And it was then explained to me, the perception that I was the Trump party.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where did that come from? It was something outside my understanding. And had I not asked that question, I mean, I was like, why is she doing that?
Yeah.
So it's just, I guess my question to you would be, how do you approach those things when you're saying to be intentional and you're wanting to make that difference? If someone did that with you in your neighborhood directly across, would you approach it? Would you not? How would you influence other people in your neighborhood on a personal level, not a business level?
Yeah. First, let me say I don't know how I would have dealt with that. So I just want to first say that. I had that situation, and I don't know. I can talk about what I hope might happen. I hope I know them. And I'd say, hey, did that cause that? Because I want to talk about what this means to me. And I want to hear about what that means to you. That's what I hope would happen. I know I live in the real world, and maybe you don't know them that way, or maybe there are some people that you cannot talk to, that you're just too amped up about whatever, on either side. And I respect that too. And I just let those people be. Because there's some other people who are ready to have a conversation with you. And I don't have time for the people who don't, on either side of the issue. If everything's racial oppression, I get tired of that, and if everything is, blacks need to get their act together and stop crying, I get sick of that too. So I don't want to hear either side of that extreme. So that's what I hope would happen, but I'll be honest with you, I've never had that situation, so I don't know how I would respond. I don't put anything up. I don't put political signs. I didn't put a Black Lives Matter sign in my yard, although I live in Amberley. And I got some woke white or Jews or something in that neighborhood. There was Black Lives Matter sign. I know not in Amberley. There was Black Lives Matter signs everywhere. And the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life, one of the houses had like 5 little signs during election time. 5 little signs. When I say little, about like this big, with a little stick, right? It's stuck in the ground. Political sign about that big. And they were Trump signs. They were super little. And I was like, dude, like, if you're gonna do it, like, put the sign up. And there were enough of them that made you say, what is that? So I had to get up on it, like, oh my God, it's the Trump sign. Like, make that bigger, man. I didn't get that. I took a picture of it, you guys. That big. I know that didn't help much, but I just don't think, listen, this is a tough topic and we're not all ready to talk about it. Some of us are angry and bitter and burned out and pissed off, and they've been pissed on and they're just angry. And others are defiant and stuck in their narrative and stuck on that one channel, and they're just not open. And we gotta let them be. We just gotta let them be. They ain't ready. If we make them more and more the fringe and us more and more in the middle, we can make some progress. So that's my suggestion, get as specific as we can, as soon as we can, on what we're going to do, even if it's small. Even if it's small. If we didn't, we can't, not going to get there overnight. Even if it's small, let's do something specific. And I think that'll help, because we'll stop talking so much and we'll be engaging, we'll be having experiences, we'll be having reactions, we'll be having progress, we'll be having failures, whatever we'll be having it together. I think it'll be helpful. Thanks for the question.
You're welcome. Any other questions from the audience? Well, if not, I thank you all again very much for coming. I thank especially Mel for making yourself available and sharing this.
Thanks, Bertie, for the invitation and the hospitality. Appreciate it.